Elizabeth was a poor girl, but she had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. From an early age, she understood that the only way to change her reality was through education. Even with the financial difficulties that her family faced, Elizabeth never stopped dreaming of becoming a successful professional and helping her family out of poverty. Every morning, Elizabeth woke before sunrise to get ready for school. She washed her face, combed her hair, and put on the school uniform her mother had sewn so lovingly. Afterwards, she would prepare a simple snack and leave the house to face the long walk to school. Elizabeth was a high school student, and every day she walked about an hour to school. She was known for her dedication to her studies and her good nature, always helping others and being friendly to everyone she met. An unimaginable event was about to unfold, one that would leave everyone in tears and heartbroken. That day, when she arrived at school, she saw a crowd of students crowding around the stairs leading to the second floor. She walked over and asked what was going on. It was then that a student explained that Kevin, a classmate, had fallen down the stairs and was passed out upstairs. Elizabeth knew she had to act fast. She ran upstairs and found Kevin on the floor, not breathing. She immediately started doing chest compressions and ventilating her lungs, as she learned in the first aid course. She concentrated on her movements, focusing on saving Kevin's life. As she worked to save the child's life, Elizabeth thought about what could have happened. Who was that child? How had she ended up in that state? Elizabeth was determined to save the child's life, but she knew that time was running against her. "Please wake up," Elizabeth murmured as she continued to do compressions on the child's chest. "Please, you need to wake up." She continued working tirelessly, while the crowd around her watched in silence. Some were crying, others appeared to be in shock. Elizabeth couldn't focus on them. Her attention was all on the child. Finally, after several minutes that felt like hours, the child coughed and opened his eyes. Elizabeth felt enormous relief, and a smile formed on her face. "You're fine now," she said, helping the child to sit up. "What happened?" The child looked at her with frightened eyes and began to cry. "I don't know," she said, sobbing. "I was just playing with my friends and suddenly everything went dark." Elizabeth tried to calm the child, but she continued to cry. Meanwhile, the crowd around her began to move, and soon a medical team arrived to take the child to the hospital. Elizabeth stood there, panting and her heart racing, trying to understand what had just happened. She wondered if the child would be okay, and if she would have done anything different to help if she'd known what had happened. That doubt was in Elizabeth's head all night. She wondered if she had done enough or if she could have done more. Since childhood, Elizabeth has always had great compassion for others. She remembered that when she was a child and saw someone crying, she would always run to comfort them. She had a big heart and felt the pain of others as if it were her own. It was because of this compassion that Elizabeth was so sympathetic to the plight of the endangered child. She knew that if she were in that situation, she would want someone to help her. She remembered how she had felt when she had injured her arm at school, and the nurse had gently treated it. The kindness and help she received from the nurse made her feel loved and cared for. So when Elizabeth saw the child in distress, she knew she had to help. It was a matter of honor for her. She couldn't just stand by and watch the child die. She felt a surge of courage run through her body and decided that she would do whatever she could to save her. After the child was taken to the hospital, Elizabeth stood there, panting and her heart racing. She was happy that the child was safe now, but she was also exhausted. However, she knew that the joy of having saved a life outweighed any weariness she might feel. A few days later, the child's mother called the school looking for Elizabeth. When they finally spoke, the child's mother thanked Elizabeth for saving her son's life. She said that she was forever grateful and that she didn't know how to thank her enough. The child's mother's words touched Elizabeth's heart. She felt happy that she had made a difference in someone's life and that her dedication and effort had not been in vain. She also realized that this act of kindness and courage was a great achievement in his life. A few months have passed since Elizabeth saved the child's life in distress. She continued to attend school and devoted herself to her studies, but she never forgot what happened that day. 2 years later, while she was at home studying for her final exams, the doorbell rang. Elizabeth got up to answer the door and saw a man standing outside. He was tall and thin, with brown hair and blue eyes. "Hi, Elizabeth," he said, smiling. "I'm Gabriel. Remember me?" Elizabeth looked at him, confused. She didn't recognize the name or the face. "Sorry, I'm not remembering. What do you want?" Gabriel took a deep breath and approached her. "I am the father of that child you saved 2 years ago," he said. "I just wanted to thank you for saving my son's life. He is alive and well thanks to you." Elizabeth was shocked. She never expected to be recognized for what she did. "I just did what anyone would do," she said. "I didn't do anything special." "You've done something very special," said Gabriel, "and I want to return the favor." Before Elizabeth could say anything, Gabriel hugged her. He squeezed her tightly and whispered in her ear, "Thank you very much. You saved my son's life, and I will never forget that." Elizabeth was touched by Gabriel's gratitude. She wondered what he could be thinking of doing to thank her. Then, suddenly, Gabriel pulled away from her and knelt on the floor. He took a small box out of his pocket and opened it, revealing a diamond ring. "Elizabeth," he said, taking her hands, "I know this might sound crazy, but I can't think of anyone I love more than you. You are the bravest, kindest person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Do you want to marry me?" Elizabeth was shocked. She hadn't expected this. She looked at Gabriel, trying to find the words to respond, but she couldn't speak. She felt her heart race and her face heat up. Finally, after a moment of silence, she knelt beside Gabriel and said, "Yes, I do. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Gabriel put the ring on her finger and hugged her again. Elizabeth felt happy and thrilled, knowing that she had done something so important and that she was being rewarded for it. She felt so happy and grateful that she had saved Gabriel's son's life and that now she had found a life partner. But despite being happy with the surprise, Elizabeth was also a little scared. She knew that her future was changing dramatically and that many changes were to come. She knew that Gabriel was a good and kind man, but she also knew that marriage would be a big commitment and that it would take a lot of work and dedication. She wondered if she was ready for this, if she was ready to commit to someone else for the rest of her life. Then she looked down at the ring on her finger and smiled. She knew that she had done the right thing and that her life was changing for the better. Elizabeth and Gabriel teamed up to combat some of the world's most dire situations in a philanthropic way. They began working together on a charity project, raising funds and resources to help those in need. Now get ready to meet Sophia. I'm sure this story will thrill you. Sophia was a poor young woman who lived in a small village on the outskirts of the city. She lived with her mother in a modest home, but she was always grateful to have a roof over her head and food on her table every day. One day, her mother got sick and had to be admitted to the hospital. Sophia was very worried, as she knew the treatment costs would be high and her mother did not have health insurance. She wanted to do something to help pay for the medical bills, but she didn't have enough money for that. It was then that Sophia had the idea to sell some of the clothes that she and her mother no longer wore. Sophia was determined to sell some of the clothes she and her mother no longer wore. She knew she could earn extra money to help with her mother's treatment and decided that the mall would be the best place to sell her clothes. Arriving at the mall, Sophia felt intimidated by the grandeur of the place and the sophistication of the people around her. She wasn't used to such opulence and wealth. While walking through the halls of the mall, Sophia came across Annie, a rich and arrogant young woman who looked at her with disdain. Annie could not hide her superiority over Sophia and made a point of publicly humiliating her. "What's a country girl doing here? You can't afford anything at this mall," Annie said with a cynical smile on her face. Sophia tried to ignore the food, Annie's feelings, but her anger was bubbling up inside. She wasn't going to let Annie's wealth intimidate her, and she decided to face it. "I don't need to buy anything here. I came to sell my clothes. And by the way, I would rather be from the countryside than have the arrogance of someone like you," Sophia replied firmly. Sophia, despite feeling intimidated, didn't let Annie's words shake her. She knew she had to stand her ground and not let Annie's arrogance get her down. But Annie didn't give up. She continued to insult Sophia, calling her a commoner and saying that she didn't belong at the mall. Her words were hard and cruel, and Sophia could feel the anger and arrogance seeping out of Annie. "You have no idea what it's like to be rich and powerful," said Annie, with a wry smile. "You're just a country girl who came to try to sell old clothes in this mall. You'll never be one of us." Annie's words were like a knife in Sophia's heart. She knew life was hard in the countryside, but she never thought her poverty could be used against her so cruelly. The humiliation that Sophia suffered at the hands of Annie was something that made her deeply angry. She had never felt so inferior and disrespected before. Sophia always knew that life in the countryside was difficult, but she never thought that her social status could be used against her in such a cruel and disrespectful way. As she walked through the mall, Sophia saw the wealth and ostentation that surrounded Annie and people like her. She saw stores with expensive clothes and luxury items that cost more than she would earn in a year. She felt revolted by the social inequality that existed in society. She knew that despite working hard and having important values like humility and kindness, she was still seen as inferior by rich people like Annie. But Sophia didn't let that revolt consume her. She remembered the lessons her mother had taught her about the importance of humility and compassion and decided she wasn't going to let Annie's words get her down. She continued to sell her clothes, determined to help her mother with her medical treatment and not let the arrogance and bossiness of others define her. Sophia was born and raised in a small town in the countryside. She lived with her mother in a modest house, surrounded by green fields and animals. Since she was a child, Sophia learned to value the simplicity of country life and the importance of working hard to survive. Her mother was a strong and hardworking woman who worked hard to support her family. She taught Sophia how to cultivate the land, care for animals, and value nature. Sophia loved to spend hours walking through the countryside, observing the flowers and animals. Despite living in a remote region, Sophia never felt isolated or lonely. She had many friends in the city and loved attending local parties and events. She was also in the habit of reading books and learning about the world beyond the countryside. But Sophia always knew that life in the countryside was difficult. She saw her mother working hard every day, taking care of the animals and planting the land. She knew that in order to survive, it took a lot of determination and willpower. As Sophia grew older, she began to feel the urge to explore the world beyond the countryside. She wanted to meet new people, learn new things, and see different places. An unexpected turn of events was about to happen, and Annie would bitterly regret her actions. Sophia was walking through the mall when suddenly Avery, an old friend from her rural days, appeared in front of her. She was surprised and happy to see him again after so long. But Avery was different. He looked tense and worried, as if something very serious was going on. Sophia asked what was going on, and Avery hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. "I need to tell you something, Sophia. I am descended from the most important family in the country. My family has many enemies and people who want to harm us. I think they are following me," said Avery, visibly shaken. Sophia was shocked by Avery's revelation. She never imagined he was a member of such an important and influential family. But before she could ask more, Avery signaled for her to look around. Sophia saw Annie approaching with a look of fear on her face. She appeared to be running away from someone or something. "That's Annie, the girl who humiliated you earlier," Avery said, with a vengeance in her voice. "She's one of the people who wants to harm us. Let's follow her and see what she's doing here." Sophia and Avery followed Annie through the halls of the mall, keeping a safe distance. They watched as she entered a private room, accompanied by a mysterious man. They listened to fragments of a conversation about a plan to harm Avery's family. Sophia and Avery were shocked by what they heard. They realized that the situation was much more serious than they imagined and that their lives were in danger. But before they could leave the room, the door opened, and they were caught in the act. Annie and the mystery man were there, ready to go. Sophia and Avery were trapped, but suddenly the situation changed. Avery, using his privileged position, revealed his identity to the attackers, causing them to instantly back down. Annie turned pale and shivered, realizing she had messed with the wrong people. Avery and Sophia looked at each other with relief, knowing they were safe for now. After being confronted by Avery and Sophia, Annie didn't give up. She tried to justify her actions by saying that she was just trying to protect herself from people who threatened her. But despite her attempts to defend herself, Annie knew she faced dire consequences for her actions. She lost many important friends and allies, who now saw her as an unscrupulous and treacherous person. Annie also faced legal problems, as her actions violated various laws and ethical standards. She had to face a trial in which many people testified against her, reporting her disrespectful and arrogant behaviors. The trial was a difficult time for Annie. She had to face public scrutiny and answer for her actions before a jury of her peers. She felt humiliated and ashamed, but she also had the opportunity to reflect on her mistakes and try to make amends with the people she had wronged. In the end, Annie was sentenced to serve a severe sentence, which included doing community service and paying a hefty fine. She also lost much of her social and economic standing, as many people stopped doing business with her or associating with her. But despite all the consequences she faced, Annie knew she still had a lot to learn. She realized that her arrogance and bossiness had clouded her judgment and led her to make poor decisions. She decided to make a commitment to change her behavior and look for ways to make amends for the harm she had caused. She knew it would be a long road to redeem herself, but she was willing to do whatever it took to regain her dignity and integrity. Avery and Sophia had become close friends since their reunion at the mall. They chatted often and shared stories about their lives and experiences. But one day, Avery showed up at Sophia's house looking grim and determined. He seemed to be carrying a great burden on her shoulders. Sophia knew immediately that something was wrong. She offered a drink and asked what was going on. "Something terrible has happened, Sophia," Avery said, her voice strained. "I have been informed that someone is spreading rumors about you. They say that you are a dishonest and treacherous person, and that you cannot be trusted." Sophia was shocked to hear this. She knew that people could be cruel, and that they often made up lies and rumors about others. But she never expected that something like this could happen to her. Avery continued, "I cannot allow these lies to be spread. I will not let you be talked down to, Sophia. I have decided to take tough action on behalf of your honor." Sophia was startled by Avery's words. She knew he was a determined and courageous person, but she also knew that he could be impulsive and violent when he felt threatened. She asked what he was planning to do, but Avery just smiled enigmatically and left the house, promising to resolve the situation. Sophia was apprehensive and worried about what Avery might be planning. She knew that he would do whatever was necessary to protect her, but she also knew that he could end up creating even more problems. She stayed up all night, trying to imagine what Avery was doing. She wondered if he was planning to confront the people spreading the rumors, or if he was seeking help from other sources. But for all her worries, Sophia had no idea what Avery was planning. She could only hope and pray that he wouldn't do anything that would further damage her reputation or put her in danger. Sophia was a young woman who always believed in the power of kindness and humility. She knew the world could be cruel and unfair, but she never lost hope that people could be better and more understanding. One day, Sophia had to face a big challenge. She discovered that her mother was sick and needed expensive medical treatment, which they could not afford. Sophia was devastated by the news. She felt helpless and desperate, not knowing what to do to help her. But she knew she couldn't give up. She decided that she would do whatever was necessary to get the money for her mother's treatment. Sophia began to work at several jobs at once. She worked during the day as a waitress at a restaurant, and at night she sold clothes at a local store. She slept only a few hours a night, but she never let her resolve waver. One day, Sophia saw Annie at a local party. She knew that Annie had been one of the people who had humiliated her in the past, but she decided to give her a second chance. Sophia talked with Annie and realized that, despite her past mistakes, she was also struggling with her own challenges and difficulties. Sophia decided that she would forgive her and try to help her the same way she was helping her mother. Sophia and Annie began working together on a fundraiser for a local charity. They got closer and became close friends. Sophia knew she couldn't change the past, but she decided that she could use her kindness and humility to create a better future for herself and those around her. In time, Sophia managed to raise the necessary money for her mother's treatment. She felt proud of herself for overcoming challenges and finding a way to help those she loved. After overcoming many challenges together, Sophia and Avery were finally able to achieve success in their business. They used their determination and skills to create a thriving business that helped improve the lives of many people in their area. Sophia and Avery started to invest in various areas such as technology, agriculture, and tourism. They created a business that employed many local people and helped the economy grow. Over time, they managed to triple the size of their equity and attract many collaborators. They opened new branches in other regions of the country, and their company became one of the most successful and respected in the whole country. Today, Sophia and Avery continue to work together, always committed to creating a better world for all. They know there's a lot of work to be done, but they also know they are on the right track and that their success is just the beginning of a journey that they hope will inspire many others. Sophia and Avery's story teaches us many valuable lessons about humility, forgiveness, karma, and the law of attraction. If you like this story and want to see more heartwarming stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Here, you'll find a variety of inspiring stories that will touch your heart and inspire you to be a better person.